if we look at those few keywords of this presentation, multimodality, multimodal ethnography, narrative learning, narrative pedagogies, critical reflection, self-reflexivity, and identity exploration, hopefully they signify for us from the onset that in this short presentation we'll be talking not only about a particular qualitative methodology, but also in how it can enrich and inform a set of pedagogies which collectively we refer to as narrative pedagogies, in ways that can facilitate greatly, I think, and I've experienced this for years, critical reflection and self-reflexivity. And these pedagogies can also offer amply to our students opportunities and spaces to reinterpret, reconfigure, and make sense, infuse meaning-making into their pedagogies. The gentleman at the back this morning, I was very happy with the point that you made when you said constantly our students ask, what is the relevance of the subject that I have to study? My son is at sixth form and he chose the subjects that he wanted to study. But there are components in those subjects which he still asks, why should I study this, you know, when it comes to computer studies or whatever. And what does this tell us? That students are all the time after relevance. They want relevance. And student-centered pedagogies can become even more relevant, and that's the rationale behind narrative pedagogies, if they manage to connect students' everyday life experiences to the content of their curriculum. And so, as responsible, committed, and passionate educators, we must always feel, I would say, without exaggerating, I believe, morally obliged to challenge ourselves with the question or questions, how can we connect the curriculum's content with our students' everyday lives? How can the learning outcomes and the pedagogies that enflesh them in our classrooms speak to and address our students' lives? And even bring about healing, which many students need, and even ourselves, resilience, empowerment, a sense of agency, and hope. So, as I told you already, one set of pedagogies that can prove effective in this regard are narrative pedagogies. Through these, the sharing of and reflection upon life experiences becomes a way to enhance learning and engagement. Why? Because students are provided with opportunities, and this is what they really want, for meaning making. And it's interesting that if you look at a lot of research, especially over these last 3 decades, they put meaning making as one of the most important criteria which defines spirituality. So nowadays, even in research, when we talk about spiritual growth, spiritual development, spirituality, we're not referring to anything religious necessarily, but to opportunities for meaning making. One of the most significant and major characteristics of today's culture is its dependence on digital worlds. And I think, nobody denies that. New technologies and virtual realities. We are, and even more so, young generations and our children are literally immersed in this world. Now, the fact that today's digital technologies afford so many opportunities for participation, and they also offer so many different modes of expression that include not only print and digital text, but also images, gestures, sound, movement. This can provide ample opportunities to children and young people, not only to learn, but also to express their and shape their identity as they would like to, through the interpretation of life experiences, from the stance of their own subjective worlds. This reality has led a great number of scholars, I can tell you, to turn to multimodality in their endeavors to understand everyday life interaction and communication in contemporary social life. This even provided a new and broader framework to understand connections between learning and communication, the diversity of modes that are used for meaning making, as well as the significance of the social in meaning making, because it's not only an individual endeavor which is engaged by our students on an individual basis. Meaning making is part of our social fabric. And even the shape of our culture, and the trajectory that our society takes is very much dependent on how people engage in this meaning making collectively, obviously under the influences of so many factors, cultural factors, societal factors, economic factors, and so on. Multimodal research is also very important, and here I'm proposing, that multimodal research, multimodal ethnography, is not only a qualitative methodology, but it's a type of pedagogy. And when the two are related, I can be doing, and hopefully we have more teachers who are constantly doing research, reflecting as they teach. And then we can talk a lot more, not only about assessment of and for learning, but even assessment as learning. These also include the analysis of visual data, video-based data, and naturally occurring digital data, such as visual digital displays. The use of film and video data provide a reaccessible and permanent record of complex interactions over time. How much do we believe in the value of, for example, analyzing what we ask our students to do, even visually, even in interaction in the classroom? Or we use those, end products just to throw a number, and use them for assessment, of learning. Multimodal ethnography can offer valuable insights into how to employ narrative approaches in teaching and learning. And it offers students opportunities to interpret life experiences in relation to the learning outcomes addressed. So, I would just like to, because it will take me just a few minutes. In the paper, I talk about three main theoretical assumptions which underpin a multimodal approach, which we need to be very careful about, because when I'm doing multimodal ethnographic research, one of the biggest challenge, especially when it's related to meaning making, spirituality, reinterpretation of life experiences. Our research is underpinned by many philosophical frameworks, I use, for example, Paul Ricoeur, one of the most prominent French philosophers, and his Ricoeurian method of interpretation. But in the times of Ricoeur and other philosophers and linguists, the main mode of communication was text. So what these people had in mind and what they were analyzing was written text. But how are we going to now analyze different levels of text? If we're going to offer our students opportunities to, just to give you examples of what I do with my students, if they are engaged in mood boarding, storyboarding, script writing, and they have to develop so many skills as they do these, they take photos individually, together. We use metaphors a lot, so if I'm talking, for example, about faith or the approach that we should have towards suffering in life, okay, how am I going to talk about that? Or how am I going to facilitate their discussion on the value of suffering? So I would prefer to engage them in metaphors which they can find, which they can shoot, which they can film, which for them signify suffering and its value. And when they film those metaphors and they embed them into their multimodal products, and then they show those multimodal artifacts to each other, and the facilitator asks, so why do you use this metaphor for suffering, for faith, and how you envisage faith? Or for why you believe in God or not, for example. Why do you use this metaphor? How does it speak to you? It gives them opportunities to engage with their own symbol system, which lies in their own memory. And it's our memory which defines us. It's what we do through and inside our memory. The way that we consciously or unconsciously juggle around in their interpretation of what lies in our memory, which defines our personality and our attitudes and our learning styles and preferences, and we could talk about what have you. So, to conclude, I will go straight to this slide. My research and the research of other colleagues of mine with whom I work shows over the years that students' identity exploration and construction through multimodal ethnography, when it is used, employed, and embedded into a pedagogy, enables a more effective pedagogy for creative expression, for empathy and compassion, for agency and authenticity, a pedagogy of vulnerability, and a pedagogy through metaphor. And I just decided to conclude my presentation by just reading out to you a few things, a few statements, a few expressions of our students in these lessons and research projects at the same time. So I had students, from different church schools where I worked for a quarter of a century, okay? And we used to address learning outcomes which are in the syllabi of subjects like PSCD, religious education, and media literacy education, which were my three main subjects. We took learning outcomes from all these subjects, so this is also an example of interdisciplinarity from an academic stance, which is translated into a cross-curricular approach, in our schools. And I would just like to read to you a few snippets from, I have them here as well, don't worry. So, because I'm a lot into technology, but I know its limitations as well, so I'm always prepared with printed material as well, When we teach the media, we can never omit, the traditional media, they are important as well. So, the first one, pedagogy for creative expression. So these are the students speaking to us. I was comfortable to express myself creatively, and that was not boring at all. The fact that you go out taking pictures and footage to create a video that explains your personal faith is different to how we usually learn. That makes it even more appealing. I will never forget all the images that were shared, as they not only strengthened our friendship, but brought to my mind more images from my personal life that I could now see differently and feel more at peace. A pedagogy of okay, the slide is not turning. That's okay. A pedagogy of empathy and compassion. It feels so good, one student said, When people understand you and know exactly what you are feeling because you realize that they went through it as well, you feel that you are not alone. When some of my friends came to hug me, that's something I used to let them do, okay? After I shared my difficult experience, and she was, just for your information, she was referring to the separation of her parents and her father's cancer diagnosis, I felt accepted and loved and cared for who I am, non-judgmentally. A pedagogy of agency and authenticity. I really felt happy, free, empowered to speak without fear, to speak my mind without shackles, and that is great. It makes you feel the power of freedom and unique in every sense. As you express and share your story, especially those parts of it that were hidden for so long, some teachers told me, for many years, these girls were at that school since year 1, and now she was in year 10, and there were some things that she shared, okay? Obviously, we had limits to that. Parameters have to be very clear, but they told me in 9 years and 10 years, she never shared this with anyone, and not even any member of the school leadership team knew about this. But she felt comfortable enough to share it with her friends, and more importantly, to reinterpret it and find meaning in it, which would empower her, to act in the future. That's the cognitive domain of learning. She said, as you express your story and share it, especially those parts hidden for so long, you feel more compelled and freer to do so, as this process gives you the ability to know better what you want in life and what can make you live a meaningful life, feeling happy and fulfilled. A pedagogy of vulnerability. I asked, how do you see the expression of one's vulnerability, especially in a classroom environment? Positive, negative, good, bad, why? I think it's good, as we all come to realize that we're on the same boat, that we all have weaknesses and fears. In fact, she had used the metaphor of the boat, which if you see her multimodal presentation, she starts, with filming a boat on the sea. So when she spoke about why she started with a boat, with the sea, with the waves, when she was explaining that metaphor, then she gave herself and us the opportunity to tap into something much, much more meaningful. As we're on the same boat, that we all have weaknesses and fears, and by sharing them, we can help each other become stronger. But there are limits to how vulnerable one becomes. As I shared experiences with my friends, and they did the same with me, we all came to realize that there are so many things that we can do and want to do in life, but that we were afraid to do till now, due to what others think or our fear. But now we are determined to move on and try new things with each other and support each other in doing so. And finally, pedagogy through metaphor, filming metaphor. Life seems to frequently tend to be cloudy. She used clouds as her metaphor when she was filming and taking photos. And the clouds can be quite thick and dark. But rays of light can always come out from somewhere. So obviously we had to process not only the clouds, but also the rays of light coming in through the clouds, You just have to be on the lookout for them. You mentioned life struggles. Can you give us a few examples? What you're referring to, I had quite a few of them. There were times in primary school when I was bullied, mostly verbally, and made to believe that I could not succeed in school. I was a failure. But now I believe in myself, in my great potential. So I think those are 5 aspects, not the only 5, but 5 aspects of our pedagogy, especially, not only, but especially in humanistic subjects, which we need to cultivate, which we need to nurture. And I think through much more multimodal engagement, okay? Both as a research method, underpinned by, a certain by certain epistemological and ontological assumptions. But embedded in a multimodal type of pedagogy, we can promote these kinds of pedagogies, which give infuse a lot of relevance into the student subjects because they connect them and speak to their lives. Thank you.